There's a topic I want to explore with you today, something that has fascinated, puzzled, and frankly bothered me for a long time. This is about a trait, a skill, a force that quietly shapes our careers, our relationships, and our ability to live with purpose. And I've increasingly come to realize that having this skill at a high level in your life potentially enhances your ability to live a more intentional life. Please listen to the end of this episode, as I have one very unique invitation and one interesting giveaway I want to end off on today. Intentionality with Paul Kempff, for people who lead with intention and live with impact. The topic I want to talk about is emotional intelligence. And for me, it all boils down to 4 key questions that have been circling in my mind. So question number 1, how important is emotional intelligence really in our lives? In our work, our relationships, and our quest to live an intentional life, what role does emotional intelligence actually play? How much of a determining factor is emotional intelligence in the success equation of our lives? Question number 2, are we born with it? How much of our EQ is set by our genes, our childhood, or our personality? In other words, how much control do we truly have over our level of emotional intelligence? Question number 3, if we can in fact control it, how do we improve it? What are the practical, tangible things we can do to become more emotionally intelligent? And then finally, question number 4. And probably the most controversial one. Why does it feel like the Dunning-Kruger effect applies not just to traditional intelligence, but can also be applied perfectly to emotional intelligence? As I was wrestling with that first question around the importance of emotional intelligence, I couldn't help but think about AI. We hear so much about the IQ, or intelligence of artificial intelligence, how it's already surpassing most humans and will soon outthink all of us. It kind of feels inevitable. A recent study published on a website called The Visual Capitalist produced some startling results. A year ago, the best AI score on an IQ test was 96, slightly below the average human IQ. A year later, it was 135, which makes it already smarter than 99% of the human population. Who knows where it will be in another year from now? But what about the emotional intelligence in the world of AI? Could this potentially be the one edge we as humans still have left? The one uniquely human intelligence that, at least for now, can't be replicated by an algorithm? And if so, doesn't that place an even greater responsibility on us to understand it, cultivate it, and use it well in our lives? Let's embark on this journey of discovery together as we explore a topic that has long captivated and perplexed thinkers, leaders, psychologists, coaches, and in fact anyone interested in the uniquely human trait of emotional intelligence. We'll unpack what emotional intelligence truly is, examine its profound impact, and explore the fascinating paradoxes that lie at its core. My hope is that by the end, we'll have a clearer map for navigating our inner worlds and our mindsets with greater intention, and ultimately have a better understanding of the disproportionately significant effect emotional intelligence can have on causing us to behave and act in ways that does not accurately reflect our intentions. Before we dive into the deep end, let's just establish what we're talking about first. The concept of emotional intelligence was famously popularized by the psychologist Daniel Goleman in his groundbreaking book of the same name. A book I believe I recommended as a tip of the week in a much earlier episode on the show. Goleman defined emotional intelligence, or EQ, as the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our emotions. And just as importantly, to recognize, understand, and influence the emotions of others. He broke this down into 4 core skills in his book. The first of those skills is self-awareness. Now, this is the very foundation of emotional intelligence. The ability to see yourself clearly, your emotions, strengths, weaknesses, and values, and then to understand how they affect your thoughts and actions. The second skill is self-management. What you do with that awareness. It's about controlling impulsive feelings, managing your emotions in healthy ways, and adapting to change with resilience. The third skill is social awareness, the ability to understand the emotions, needs, and concerns of other people. At its heart, this is what empathy is about, the capacity to pick up on emotional cues and feel for others. And then the fourth skill is around relationship management. Using all of the above to develop and maintain good relationships, communicate clearly, inspire others, and navigate conflict constructively. I recently read a very interesting article on EQ by an influential leader in my industry that served as one of the sources of inspiration for this episode of IWPK. And in this article, he defined emotional intelligence beautifully. So here's what he said. It's not about being nice. It's about being effective when emotions are high, trust is low, and the stakes are real. While IQ may open doors, emotional intelligence and emotional mastery determine how far you will go once you are inside. That quote really cuts right to the heart of it. So let's tackle my first question I asked. Just how important is EQ? The research on this is overwhelmingly clear. Emotional intelligence isn't just a soft skill. It's a fundamental driver of success in nearly every aspect of our life. Yes, traditional intelligence gets you in the door, but the leaders who truly make a difference, the ones we instinctively trust and want to follow, are the ones who lead with high EQ. High EQ leaders have control over their emotions and egos. They stay calm in chaos. They speak to the heart and lead with composure in a volatile world. And the numbers back this up. And these numbers are quite staggering. In the workplace, research suggests that emotional intelligence accounts for 58% of performance in all types of jobs. 90% of top performers have high emotional intelligence. And EQ is a better predictor of success than IQ, where on average people with high EQ earn $29,000 more per year than their low EQ counterparts. It's therefore no wonder that 75% of Fortune 500 companies in the US now offer emotional intelligence training as well. The impact extends beyond individuals to entire organizations. Companies that prioritize EQ are 22 times more likely to outperform their competitors. Teams with emotionally intelligent leaders see higher engagement, lower turnover, and a greater innovation and creativity. It is clear that emotional intelligence is no longer a luxury, but a necessity for professional success. In leadership, EQ is not a nice to have. It is what makes the difference. High EQ leaders build organizations people want to be part of. They do not motivate with fear or manipulation. They rather inspire through stability, presence, and clarity. They make people feel seen without being soft. They bring psychological safety to tough conversations and structure to emotional chaos. Why? Because when people feel emotionally safe, they take risks. They speak up. They bring their whole creative selves to the table. The importance of emotional intelligence is not limited to the workplace. It is equally crucial for building and maintaining fulfilling personal relationships. Individuals with high EQ are better equipped to navigate the complexities of human interaction, to communicate effectively with loved ones, and to resolve conflicts constructively. They are more empathetic and understanding, which fosters deeper connections and a greater sense of intimacy. Moreover, emotional intelligence is strongly linked to better mental health and overall well-being. By understanding and managing their emotions, individuals with high EQ are better able to cope with stress, anxiety, and depression. Living an intentional life requires us to close the gap between who we are and who we want to be. And emotional intelligence is the bridge that helps us cross that gap. This brings me to my second big question for this episode. Are we stuck with the emotional intelligence we have? How much is predetermined by our genes? And how much can we actually change and improve our emotional intelligence levels? For a long time, the prevailing belief was that intelligence, in all its forms, was largely inherited. But modern research tells us a more nuanced and hopeful story, suggesting that while genetics certainly does play a role, environmental factors may have a more significant impact on certain cognitive abilities, including those related to emotional intelligence. A fascinating study published in the journal Cell Reports looked at identical and fraternal twins to untangle the effects of genetics and environment. And while they confirmed in the study that general IQ is highly heritable, between 50 and 80%, they found that the skills central to emotional intelligence, like metacognition, which is thinking about your own thinking, and mentalizing, which is recognizing emotions in others, were far more influenced by environment. In other words, our upbringing, education, and life experiences play a massive role. In addition, it is also important to note that the human brain is remarkably malleable, especially during childhood and adolescence. This neuroplasticity means that our brains are constantly being shaped and reshaped by our experiences. Education in particular has been shown to be a powerful force in developing cognitive skills, including those related to emotional intelligence. Consistent practice and targeted learning can enhance our ability to understand and manage our emotions, in the same way that we can improve our mathematical or linguistic abilities. So while our genes might give us a certain predisposition, they don't seal our fate. Now, this is something I find to be incredibly empowering. It means that we all have the potential to cultivate and enhance our emotional intelligence throughout our lives. It is not a static trait, but a dynamic set of skills that can be learned, practiced, and developed over time. For me, this is a huge relief for two reasons. First, it validates my belief that I have been able to grow my own emotional intelligence over the years through learning from mistakes, staying curious, and intentionally working on my mindset. Second, because it means the improvement is not over yet. I can still do better. Increasing my own emotional intelligence intentionally in the future remains a personal goal that will allow me to continue to show up better in professional and personal relationships. And this is something we are all capable of doing. This brings us to the most practical question of all, the third question I asked in the beginning of this episode. If we have the power to change our emotional intelligence, how do we do it? The journey begins with that foundational pillar, self-awareness, the cornerstone on which all other emotional competencies are built. there are a couple of powerful practices that can get you started on this journey. The first is practicing mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to the present moment without judgment. Now, don't misunderstand me. You don't have to become a monk to practice mindfulness. This can be as simple as taking a few moments each day to sit in silence and observe your thoughts and feelings as they arise without judgment. The second is keeping a journal, writing down what you're feeling and what's causing it. By writing down your thoughts, emotions, and the situations that trigger them, you can begin to identify patterns in your emotional responses and gain a deeper understanding of your inner world. And then the third example is seeking honest feedback. Asking people you trust, friends, family, and colleagues, how they experience you. This can provide incredibly valuable insights into how your emotions and behaviors are perceived by others. Now, don't misunderstand, this can be tough, but remember, you cannot grow what you cannot see. Once you've developed a greater sense of self-awareness, you can begin the work on self-management. Again, a few examples of practical self-management techniques are: first, master the pause. When you feel a strong emotion rising, like anger or frustration, simply pause. Take one deep breath before you speak or act. That 1 second can be the difference between reaction and intention, and may just prevent you from saying or doing something you might later regret. Second practical tip: listen to your body. A tight chest, a clenched jaw, a headache. These are physical signs of emotional stress. Pay attention to them. They are clearly warnings that allow you to address an emotion before it hijacks you. Next, focus on social awareness and empathy. Developing social awareness and empathy is another crucial aspect of emotional intelligence. This involves actively trying to understand the perspectives and emotions of others. Active listening is a key skill in this area. When you are in a conversation, make a conscious effort to focus on what the other person is saying, rather than just waiting for your turn to speak. Ask open-ended questions to encourage them to share more about their thoughts and feelings. Pay attention to nonverbal cues, such as body language and tone of voice, as these can often reveal more about a person's emotional state than their words alone. Finally, to improve your relationship management skills, it is essential to practice effective communication. Effective communication means expressing your own thoughts and feelings clearly and respectfully, while also being mindful of the impact of your words on others. It also involves being willing to have difficult conversations and to work through conflicts constructively. One helpful mindset to adopt is that of unconditional positive regard. And this is something I like a lot. It simply means assuming that everyone is doing the best they can, even when you disagree with them. This perspective can help you to approach challenging situations with more compassion and understanding, making it easier to find common ground and resolve conflicts. Remember, building emotional intelligence is a lifelong journey. It requires a growth mindset, the belief that you can and will improve with dedicated effort. By embracing challenges as opportunities for growth, seeking out learning opportunities, and celebrating your progress along the way, you can continuously refine your emotional intelligence skills and unlock your full potential for success and fulfillment. Now we get to the most controversial part of this exploration of emotional intelligence, and the fourth question I asked at the beginning of this episode. And the question is really around how I've had this feeling, this nagging feeling for a long time, that the Dunning-Kruger effect can be applied to emotional intelligence as well. I've spoken about the Dunning-Kruger effect in a previous episode on this channel, but maybe you have never been exposed to this fascinating theory before. So first, a brief explanation of what it is. The Dunning-Kruger effect, first identified by psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger in 1999, is a cognitive bias in which people with low ability at a task overestimate their own ability. It is in essence a case of being unskilled and unaware of it. The very lack of skill that makes a person incompetent also prevents them from recognizing their own incompetence. The original studies on the Dunning-Kruger effect focused on skills such as grammar, logic, and humor. However, subsequent research has found that this cognitive bias applies to a wide range of domains, including emotional intelligence. In one study, participants were first asked to rate their own emotional intelligence and then took an actual test of their EQ. The results were a classic demonstration of the Dunning-Kruger effect. The worst performers, those who scored in the 10th percentile, had on average estimated their emotional intelligence to be at the 72nd percentile, a staggering overestimation of 62 percentile points. So much for an original idea. So much for me thinking I was the first person ever to think of this application of the Dunning-Kruger effect. But this finding still has profound implications for our understanding of emotional intelligence. It suggests that the people who are most in need of improving their emotional skills are the least likely to be aware of their deficits. This creates a double curse. Not only do they perform poorly in emotionally charged situations, but their lack of self-awareness also prevents them from seeking out the feedback and training that could potentially help them to improve. When confronted with evidence of their poor performance, these people are more likely to dismiss the feedback as inaccurate or irrelevant, a defense mechanism that Dunning and his colleagues called expedient escape. This phenomenon is not just a matter of individual self-perception. It has real-world consequences in the workplace and in our personal lives. We have all encountered individuals who seem oblivious to the emotional impact of their words and actions, who are consistently insensitive to the feelings of others, and who seem to lack the basic skills of empathy and self-regulation. The Dunning-Kruger effect helps to explain why these individuals may not only fail to see their own shortcomings, but may even believe themselves to be particularly adept at social interaction. This can lead to a great deal of frustration and conflict for those who have to interact with them. It is important to note that the Dunning-Kruger effect is not about intelligence in the traditional sense. It is about a lack of metacognition, which again is the ability to step back and examine oneself objectively. Even highly intelligent people can fall prey to the Dunning-Kruger effect, especially in areas where they lack specific skills or knowledge. The key to overcoming this cognitive bias is to cultivate a greater sense of self-awareness and to be open to feedback, even when it is difficult to hear. It requires a willingness to question our own assumptions about our abilities and to recognize that there is always more to learn. The more we learn about a particular skill, the more we come to appreciate its complexities and to recognize the limits of our own knowledge. As the old saying goes, the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. Ultimately, it is tragic that the Dunning-Kruger effect can be applied to emotional intelligence because it potentially means a downward spiral that is very difficult to get out of. The lower your EQ, the more you are punished for not being emotionally intelligent. When you are not self-aware and cannot recognize your own emotions, you often misplace blame for your circumstances and find it more difficult to take responsibility for your emotions, further lowering your emotional intelligence. When you then lash out, act without controlling your emotions, you actually push away people and destroy relationships with people that could have helped you improve your emotional intelligence and help you turn this downward spiral into something positive that could grow emotional intelligence in a virtuous cycle. Now, this raises another, almost counterintuitive question. If low emotional intelligence is a blind spot, could high emotional intelligence also have its own downside? Could a heightened awareness of your own emotions and the emotions of others actually lead to more anxiety? The research here is mixed. On one hand, there is a significant body of research that suggests a strong negative correlation between emotional intelligence and anxiety. In other words, individuals with higher emotional intelligence tend to experience lower levels of anxiety. This does make intuitive sense. The very skills that define emotional intelligence, which was self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and relationship management, are all tools that can be used to effectively manage stress and anxiety. Individuals with high emotional intelligence are better able to recognize the early signs of anxiety, to understand the triggers that set it off, and to use coping strategies to regulate their emotional responses. They are also more likely to have strong support networks which can serve as a buffer against the negative effects of stress. Research has shown that good emotional intelligence can act as a protective factor against mental health disorders, including anxiety and depression. However, there is also a compelling argument to be made for the idea that high emotional intelligence can, in some cases, be a double-edged sword. The very same self-awareness and empathy that are hallmarks of high emotional intelligence can also make individuals more attuned to their own uncomfortable emotions and more sensitive to the emotional distress of others. A person with high emotional intelligence may be more likely to engage in self-reflection and to hold themselves accountable for their actions, which can be a source of anxiety. They may also be more likely to pick up on subtle social cues and to worry about the impact of their words and actions on others. In a sense, emotional intelligence is not the absence of anxiety, but the embrace of it. It is the ability to tolerate uncomfortable emotions in the service of personal growth and meaningful relationships. The relationship between emotional intelligence and social anxiety is particularly complex. On one hand, the skills of emotional intelligence would seem to be a natural antidote to social anxiety. Yet, research suggests that the relationship is actually inverse. People with social anxiety tend to demonstrate lower levels of interpersonal emotional intelligence. However, it has also been noted that individuals with social anxiety often have a heightened ability to pick up on behavioral clues, a skill that is related to empathy. The problem may not be a lack of awareness, but rather an inability to effectively manage the anxiety that this awareness provokes. So where does this leave us? It seems that the relationship between emotional intelligence and anxiety is not as simple as we might initially assume. While a well-developed emotional intelligence is generally associated with better mental health outcomes, it is not a magic bullet that makes one immune to anxiety. In fact, the very process of becoming more emotionally intelligent may involve a period of increased anxiety as we become more aware of our own shortcomings and the emotional complexities of the world around us. The key, it seems, is not to avoid anxiety, but to develop the skills to manage it effectively. And this is where a well-rounded emotional intelligence, encompassing not just awareness, but also regulation and resilience, becomes so incredibly valuable in our lives. In this sense, perhaps true emotional intelligence isn't the absence of anxiety, but the courage to embrace it and work through it in the service of growth and connection. The goal isn't to avoid difficult emotions, but to develop the resilience to manage them effectively. Now, this brings us to the final and perhaps most forward-looking aspect of our discussion on emotional intelligence. The future of humanity in an age of rapidly advancing artificial intelligence from an emotional intelligence point of view. So let's talk about it. As AI's cognitive abilities continue to expand, it's natural to wonder what will be left for us as humans to do in the future. Emotional intelligence may be our last best hope for maintaining our relevance and our humanity in this new world. Something that I'm not alone in wondering about. It seems it has been at the forefront of the minds of many AI researchers, ethicists, and futurists. As mentioned earlier, as AI continues to develop at an exponential rate, it is becoming increasingly clear that its IQ will soon surpass that of any human. However, the realm of emotional intelligence may be the one area where humans retain a significant advantage, at least for the foreseeable future. While AI can be programmed to recognize and respond to human emotions, it lacks the genuine empathy, self-awareness, and subjective experience that are all the hallmarks of true emotional intelligence. This suggests that our uniquely human capacity for emotional understanding and connection will become even more valuable in the years to come. But this does place a greater responsibility on us to cultivate and utilize our emotional intelligence, not only to thrive in our personal and professional lives, but also to navigate the complex ethical and societal challenges that the rise of AI will inevitably present. The field of emotional AI, also known as affective computing, is dedicated to developing systems that can recognize, interpret, process, and even simulate human emotions. And the progress in this area has been nothing short of remarkable. AI systems can now analyze facial expressions, vocal intonations, and even psychological signals to detect a wide range of human emotions with a surprising degree of accuracy. In fact, a recent study found that several large language models, including ChatGPT, outperformed humans on standard emotional tests, achieving an average accuracy of 82% compared to the human average of 56%. These AI systems are already being used in a variety of applications, from customer service chatbots that can detect a customer's frustration to healthcare apps that can monitor a patient's emotional well-being. However, despite these impressive technological advancements, it is crucial to recognize the fundamental limitations of emotional AI. While AI can be programmed to recognize and respond to emotional data, it does not possess genuine emotional intelligence in the human sense of the term. AI lacks consciousness, empathy, and subjective experience. It can simulate an understanding of emotions, but it cannot truly feel them. This is a critical distinction, and it is one that has profound implications for the future of human-AI interaction. The uniquely human trait of emotional intelligence, the capacity for genuine empathy, the ability to build deep and meaningful relationships, the moral reasoning that guides our emotional responses are, for now, irreplaceable. AI can be a powerful tool for enhancing our own emotional intelligence. It can provide us with insights into our emotional patterns, help us to practice our communication skills, and even serve as a non-judgmental sounding board for our thoughts and feelings. But it cannot replace the human connection that is at the heart of a truly emotionally intelligent life. The rise of emotional AI does not diminish the importance of human emotional intelligence. In fact, it elevates it. In a world where routine cognitive tasks are increasingly automated, our ability to connect with others on an emotional level, to collaborate effectively, to lead with empathy, and to navigate complex social situations will become more valuable than ever before. And this is where that greater responsibility is placed on all of us to cultivate these skills, not only for our personal and professional success, but also for the health and well-being of our society as a whole. As we move forward into this new era of human-machine interaction, we must be mindful of the ethical challenges that emotional AI presents. Issues of privacy, data security, and algorithmic bias must be carefully considered and addressed. We must ensure that this powerful technology is used to augment rather than replace our own emotional capacities, and that it serves to enhance rather than diminish our shared humanity. More human functions are taken over by AI, the more important this unique human difference will become in the world. The future will not belong to those with the highest intelligence, but to those showing up with the highest level of emotional intelligence. As we conclude this initial exploration into the world of emotional intelligence, it is clear that we have only just begun to scratch the surface of this rich and multifaceted topic. The questions I have posed are not easily answered, and they invite us to continue our inquiry with an open and curious mind. In the coming weeks, as we try to bring in experts to share their insights, we will have the opportunity to delve even deeper into these issues, to challenge our own assumptions, and to gain a more nuanced understanding of the power and paradox of emotional intelligence. For now, let us take with us the understanding that the journey to greater emotional intelligence is a journey of self-discovery, a commitment to lifelong learning, and a profound act of intentionality. It is a journey that is not only essential for our own well-being, but also for the creation of a more compassionate and connected world.
I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the FFG Group of Companies. Take another step into living a more intentional life by being more intentional with your finances and insurance. As a trusted provider of a wide range of financial services, the FFG Group offers innovative, tailored solutions that help companies and individuals thrive and flourish. They are an amazing company that I believe in because they embody intentionality in everything they do, and I'm proud to partner with them. FFG is an authorized financial services provider. Ready to take the next step? Click the link below and start making better, more intentional financial decisions, or visit their website. Remember, with FFG, you create the memories, we ensure the journey.
Despite believing that I have a reasonable level of emotional intelligence, the mere fact that I've had to spend time on every aspect of emotional intelligence in my preparation of the content for this episode have made me realize where I still lack emotional mastery, where I can still develop certain aspects of my own emotional intelligence significantly. When I read certain practical advice and tips for better emotional intelligence, they resonate and make me feel almost guilty for believing that my emotional intelligence is sufficient. So, instead of giving an unrelated tip of the week for this episode, allow me to end off today with some really powerful tips for better emotional intelligence in the form of some powerful and profound one-liners I came across in the article on emotional intelligence I referenced earlier. Choose one that resonates and practice it this week. So here they are. Tip number 1, pause when others react. A brief breath can bring clarity. A 1-second delay rewires your brain from reaction to intention. Tip number 2, nothing intelligent comes from a triggered mouth. Tip number 3, build bridges when everyone else is burning them down. Number 4, use a calm voice when others are shouting. Number 5, emotional intelligence does not eliminate ego, it contains it. Number 6, it is possible to hold two truths at once. The emotionally intelligent can be both direct and compassionate. Number 7, high emotional intelligence shows up as groundedness. Anger, insecurity, and frustration still arise, but they are owned and not offloaded. Number 8, develop your emotional vocabulary. Drill into nuance. The more language you have for what you feel, the more choices you have in how you react. Number 9, create emotional systems. Willpower fails under pressure. Systems do not. And finally, number 10, get feedback from truth tellers, not fans. You cannot grow what you cannot see. Emotional blind spots are the most dangerous kind because they shape how others experience you, and you will never know unless someone tells you. Some really powerful truths for the week ahead, and a great start to my planned discussions on the topic of emotional intelligence in future episodes of the show. Before I sign off, 2 quick invitations for some engagement from you. First, if you are an expert on emotional intelligence and would like to contribute to this conversation, please reach out to me at paul@iwpk.co.za. I'm looking for guests for future episodes. Second, I really want to hear from as many of you in our intentional community as possible. Send me your thoughts on emotional intelligence. And as a thank you, I'll be doing a lucky draw from all the subscribers who email me on this topic. And I will give the winner a 1-hour free intentional coaching session with me. I will be announcing the winner of this giveaway in our next episode. Thank you for joining me this week and for making the choice to live a more intentional life. You've been listening to Intentionality, where we grow together. Please like, subscribe, and leave us a rating. And if this helped you today, share it with someone else on the same journey. Until next time, keep showing up with intention.